Hello class. So in the previous audio lecture for concrete structures drawing lab, we had completed section 1. So as I told, we'll be going through the entire code from starting to ending. So first section we completed, it was a small section. So this is going to be a video lecture on second section. So second section is also very small. In fact, it is only less than one and a half pages. So it is fully about theoretical aspects that should be considered during detailing, right? So I have the code on the right hand side. I have my handwritten notes also. So basically the same thing, but I just written in terms of bullet points. So when it comes to detailing, there are few points that needs to be considered. So those points are listed here, A to J, and their explanation is given in the following subsections. So we'll go through that one by one. So first one is design. So now this is not dealing with the actual structural design, because structural design has its own steps and procedures, but this is related to the design of the drawing sheets or detailing. Okay, so what are the points? First and foremost, the quantity, location and cover of steel should be simply, correctly and clearly shown. So basically, the details should be clear. So how many bars you have, where are the bars, how much is the cover and things like that. Then cross referencing and ease of reading and ease of checking should be there. Now we know that for a particular project it is a set of drawings. So first you have general notes, then you have foundation layout plan, then you have foundation detail plan in which each foundation and their detailed drawing will be there. Then there is column layout plan, and for each column layout plan there will be a separate column detailed drawing and things like that. So the drawing should sufficiently cross reference. So in the plan itself, plan of column layout drawing, it should say the details of this drawing are given in so and so sheet number. So all those cross referencing and easiness of checking should be there. You should be able to locate the details readily. Basically, if everything is given properly, suppose some in one plan you might cut a section. So where is the detailed drawing section showing this cut? That will be in a separate drawing, so that sheet number and things like that, the address should be properly referenced. Then easiness of takeover. So sometimes the engineer may change, or the detailer may change, or the site engineer may change, but even if somebody changes, you should be able to, or even the contractor itself may change, but even if that happens, the drawing should be so simple that it should be easy to take over. And then detailing should account for secondary stresses. Now this is talking about some secondary stresses that happen due to temperature variation, string gauge, etc. when we are providing labs, splices, hooks and all. So what are labs, what are splices and what are hooks, those things it will come later when we discuss those sections. So primary stresses which are due to dead load and live load, that is what automatically taken in design. So secondary stresses mostly it will be minimal, but if at all it is anything significant, that should be considered in the design and detailing as well. Then let's come to cutting and bending. Now first thing is that the sheet size that is being supplied or in which the drawing is made, it should be such that it should not be too large. So you can imagine, right, at site a person might be holding the sheet with two hands. So the size should be easy to handle, and then some standardization should be followed with regards to cutting length, bar bending schedule and things like that. Because we know that we will be showing many cut lengths when you are following the procedure of curtailment, or even in slab detailing you will be extending the top bar only up to a certain length where that negative reinforcement is there. So all those things are there. So many places we have to show the length of the bar. So as much as possible we'll try to standardize the length such that it is easy to read. So one of the things that people follow is they will round off everything to 25 uh, 20, 25 times. So the spacing they'll keep it maybe 300, 275, 250, or the length also in terms of 25. So some standardization, even if marginally the cost may go up, it is still preferred for easiness of handling at site. Then let's discuss about placing and wiring in position. Now we know that uh, these reinforcements, right? So the reinforcement, if suppose you take a beam, you have stirrup, your main bar. So connecting the main bar and stirrups, there is a winding wire. So that is to ensure that both the reinforcement and main reinforcement and stirrups are in place even when you are concreting it. So I don't know how many of you have gone to site to see a real construction, but so those things are there to ensure that the reinforcement is in place. So at the position we want. So good detailing practices should be there to ensure that they are properly maintained. Then avoid crowding drawings with information. So sometimes in a drawing you might have to show many details. So if it is a slab section drawing, bottom reinforcement, top reinforcement, both direction, thickness. So depending upon the level of detailing, uh, you should choose the scale of drawing. So if there are too many details, you increase the scale so that it's a blown up image and you can show all the details without making the drawing too crowded. So that is to avoid the crowding in the drawing. Then reinforcement at top portion to be cast at different, yeah. So sometimes you might have, due to certain reasons, certain part of the reinforcement or the concrete belonging to certain parts of the reinforcement should be cast at a certain time, certain other parts at certain other time. So those things should be properly identified. And then out of ordinary sequence. So if there are any special sequences in construction, those should be also shown in the drawing. Then maintaining position of reinforcement. Now this is one step above winding wires and things like that. So what, as we know, what happens is in RCC, first you will have the reinforcement cage inside, right? Then only we'll concrete it. So you can imagine, see that initially without concrete reinforcement, that whole setup is, suppose again taking the example of a beam, you have stirrups, you have main bars. So those should be at a certain height. So those should be also at a, with a certain side cover. So you cannot place it in air like that. So there are something known as cover blocks, side blocks, and things like that, which are kept before concreting such that the appropriate cover is maintained. There are also something known as chairs and stools, which also serve similar function but for the top reinforcement. So what are chairs and what are stools in the context of RCC? It will come later. Okay. So right now this is the thing. Those things, whatever is needed, should be clearly conveyed through the drawing in a appropriate manner. Then pre-assembly of cages and mats. So sometimes what happens is in certain structures, like foundation, piles and things like that. I'm just giving example. There are other examples as well. We will create the reinforcement cage outside. So depending upon the pile diameter or the footing size, the appropriate bars are kept, placed together, and if it is a pile, you have the stirrups tied to the main bar, and the cage is prepared outside the pit. So that is known as reinforcement cage, the complete assembly, and then it is lowered in place. So the detailing should be such that it should be convenient for such pre-assembly. So that pre-assembly unit should be strong enough, as well as at the same time it should not be too heavy, because ultimately people should, they'll be lifted. Of course sometimes crane also will be there, but it should not be too heavy. The detailing should take care of that aspect. Then concreting, coming to concreting, ensure that reinforcement is sufficiently placed to allow for placing and efficient compacting of concrete. Now we know that there are some codal guidelines which says that minimum spacing should be so and so. So that is to allow the concrete mixer pipe and things like vibrator and things like that to pass through and things like, so that concrete between the reinforcement will be properly compacted, and both steel and concrete acts as a one unit. So that should be maintained. Spacing should be sufficient. Of course the codal guidelines are there, but what happens is that the codal guidelines consider only one member. So suppose you have members like pile cap, where you have reinforcement coming from the column, reinforcement coming from the pile, reinforcement coming from the grade beams and things like that. The junctions become very complicated, so that should be taken care during concreting. Then other trades and services. Now this is also important, because we know that inside a concrete slab or beam, sometimes you might have to pass a duct or pipe or conduit for electrical or plumbing equipments. So before concreting itself, you have to place those ducts, sleeves, conduits and things like that. Otherwise it will be a big headache. Later you have to break it and things like that. And sometimes I have seen some disasters also. So when they realize that they don't have that pipe or hole already there, they'll try to break the concrete, and sometimes they'll also affect the reinforcement. They'll also accidentally cut or misplace or cut through the cover of the member and things like that. So all these sleeves, pipes and all should be properly considered before concreting itself, so that everything goes on smoothly. Now for big projects we have something like MEP consultants, so they'll say MEP drawings are there separately, which will give some indication on these services. Otherwise for small projects, if it is not considered, it will be a tedious task later. Then measurement of quantities. Now this is also important. The detailing should be simple and smooth, such that at any stage of the project the contractor or quantity surveyor, so quantity surveyor is basically the one who is calculating the quantities, so either quantity surveyor or contractor, they should be able to calculate exactly how much steel is being consumed from the drawing up to that stage of the project. Because this project, especially if it is long, may go to 1 year, 1.5 year, 2 years. So at any stage they should be able to know it from the drawing. So the detailing should be versatile enough to enable that to be done very easily. Then the bar bending schedule. Hope you know what is bar bending schedule. Anyway, that will come later, but anyway, to give you a small summary, it is the schedule of how bars should be bent, how much length should be bent and all, depending upon the detailing that's given for a beam, slab, whatever member. Okay, bar bending schedule will come later. So bar bending schedule, as well as bar bending schedule should be referenced, cross referenced appropriately, and revisions should be noted. So what happens is, sometimes in projects, even while construction, there will be some changes. Either the client may say some changes, you remove this beam here, or some changes might happen. So even though you will supply some drawing to the site, due to the changes, the drawing has to be modified. So that will change the detailing, that will change the quantity of steel. So those revisions should be systematically noted, so that it is easy to track the quantities later on. And last point, economy in use of steel. Now this is not referring to the economy in structural design, that of course we have to ensure, but this is referring to certain practical aspects that should be considered while design which will ensure economy. For example, we know HYSD bars and 415 grade and above steel. Uh, so those steel should be preferred over mild steel in construction, in normal RCC construction, because the strength increase is the comparison, exact comparison of strength increase, right, between 250 and 415, 500 or 550. So if compared to the strength increase or weight increase, the cost increase is only marginal. Hope you are getting my point. So the increase in cost of HYSD bar or mild steel bar is very less compared to the increase in strength of HYSD bar compared to mild steel. So if you go for HYSD bars or mild steel, it will it will obviously give a more economical and better structure. Of course, nowadays in construction RCC we don't use mild steel, but this is just a guideline. So I've seen this actually in some small towns. The engineer might design with 415 steel, but the contractor who is a small, if he's a small contractor, he might be getting actually 500 steel. So he might not pay attention whether it's 415 or 500, because the cost difference between 415 and 500 might be very marginal. So he might not even notice it. But the engineer might have designed with 415. But so that's the thing. So anyway, this strength should be considerate of economy, and the amount of cost increase is only marginal as you go for higher grades. Then another consideration is diameter. So larger diameter should be preferred over lower diameter from cost aspect, because if you consider compare it per weight, higher diameter compared to how much area increase you are getting, the cost increase is lesser than, proportionate cost increase is lesser than that. Also larger diameter produce a stiffer cage. So you know what is cage that we discussed earlier. Thank you.